When going on a journey like we are here, it's a great idea to have a map. Maps can tell you where you are. They can give you a sense of the lay of the land. And they also can tell you how to get from where you are to where you'd like to go to. We're going to use a map that will help us understand our nervous system, how our nervous system reacts to life, and how to help our nervous system become more flexible, more adaptive, more balanced. So we're going to use a map called the window of tolerance. Some of you may be familiar with this. Dan Siegel coined the term window of tolerance in the early 2000s, I believe, and Pat Ogden turned it into this visualization. I've added a few details onto it. So you can see on this slide, the window of tolerance is two parallel lines. In the middle, called the window of tolerance, this is the zone of optimal arousal. This is where we have access to a balanced and flexible sense of regulation. This is also the place in the window of tolerance where we can access the social engagement system. We'll be talking much more about that. But for right now, if we're in the window of tolerance, that's how we can access the social engagement system, which in turn helps us connect more deeply with ourselves and more deeply and more fulfillingly with others. So above the window of tolerance, we have hyperarousal dysregulation. This is also known as fight or flight response. Symptoms here can include feelings of overwhelm, feeling or being rigid, tension throughout the body, addictions, rage, overeating or restricted eating, irritability, and others. And we'll go into this in more detail in a few moments. Below the window of tolerance, we have hypoarousal. This is too low or below the level of arousal. This is also known as the shutdown or immobilization, or sometimes even feigned death. Here you have a reduced awareness of sensation. You might be emotionally numb or flat, unable to think, dissociated, or very, very lethargic and sleepy, spacey. So when we're above or below the window of tolerance, we're struggling. Now, above and below the window of tolerance, we are being influenced by defensive states, by survival states. So our nervous system, whenever it picks up the lack of safety, will tend to respond in one of two ways. Initially, for most folks, not for everyone, our energy will go up. We will become hyper-aroused, angry, irritable, frustrated, red in the face. Or we could also go, if we're in hyperarousal, into fright, flight, running away, diving into binge watching Netflix, something to escape, substances, food. These are all ways of helping us run away. So we'll go to fight or flight. And then if those don't work, or if we've had a lot of trauma, especially in childhood, then we will tend to go towards hypoarousal. Now remember, anybody, even without trauma, will go into these states. But the idea is that the more dysregulated we are, the more time we spend in these states, and the more time we are cut off from really relating to ourselves or others, because we're caught in these defensive states. One thing I also want to say about a defensive state, and we'll get more into this in a minute, is that it determines how and what you think. This is the window of tolerance, and that sine wave line going through the window of tolerance shows us a fairly normal way of moving within the window of tolerance. No one stays at the same level all day long. We move up and down within the window throughout the whole day. And at points of stress or tension, whether that's internally caused or externally caused, we might rise above or below the window. Sometimes we might get stuck there, or sometimes we might return back into the window of tolerance. Now, if you've had trauma, you or someone you know have had trauma, then it's going to look more like this window of tolerance. First, notice that the window itself is significantly constricted. It's smaller, meaning the area where you feel balanced and flexible regulation is narrow. And that more area of dysregulation, hyperarousal and hypoarousal, is available to you. So, like in this graphic, we have someone who's had trauma, and you can see it starts at the high end of the window and goes into hyperactivation. It comes back down just again into the top of the window, then it shoots back up into activation. And then that flat line up there is a period of being stuck in the activation. So maybe you've seen this in yourself where you get angry about something and you get really angry about it. And then you get distracted and maybe you hear something on the radio or something else and you relax a little bit, you come down out of that fury, and then somebody asks you about your day, or you see a car that reminds you of the person that you're angry at, and you shoot right back up into hyperarousal again. Maybe at this point, you kind of get stuck for minutes or hours on being furious or upset, or alternately terrified. And then if you spend enough time up there, the nervous system seeks balance. Like in this graphic, it will sometimes then shoot right through the window and go to hypoarousal. Some people will end up finding, I just need to take a nap, and they'll sleep for an hour or two after being so frightened or so angry. So if one has had trauma, one's window of tolerance is narrower, and the time they spend outside of their window of tolerance is greater. And as you can see, instead of being a kind of nice and easy and smooth sine wave, this is kind of a jagged, and it has sharp increases and sharp decreases. It's anything but smooth. This is what dysregulation looks like in a graph form. And what this doesn't convey is that if any of us are above or below the window of tolerance, we're suffering. We're suffering a little or we're suffering a lot, but you're not going to be happy if you're hyperaroused, and you're not going to be happy if you're hypoaroused. You're not going to be able to relate or connect to others in a truly authentic way in either hyper or hypoarousal. So you're more isolated and disconnected, and you're more stuck in these states of reactivity and survival actions. Let's take a deeper look at the fight or flight response. So a longer list of symptoms, and again, this isn't exhaustive, but I want to give you a sense of how many of our daily behaviors are expressions of fight or flight. So there's emotional overwhelm, rigid and inflexible, impulsivity, tension, anxiety, panic, defensiveness, restlessness, intrusive imagery, phobias, self-destructive behavior like cutting or smoking, emotional outbursts, addictions, overeating or restricted eating. obsessive rumination, rage, irritability, emotional reactivity, exaggerated startle response, or feeling unsafe. A couple more statements about states in general is that once I'm captured by fight and I'm angry, I'm ready and gearing up to fight, I look at everyone as an adversary. This is the human response, or at least whoever we feel is threatening our safety. And when I'm in fight, fight is controlling my thinking. I am no longer thinking rationally. I am being driven by the impulses of fight. And so everything that's fight's telling me, oh, they're so wrong, and you need to get back at them, and how could they do this, and this is unjust, just keeps feeding the fight. So I also say that defensive states are sticky. They keep us in the state. And that's what they're designed to do. They keep us in the state. I'm going to move away from this slide for a moment to show you something that maybe some of you have seen, which is, again, Dan Siegel's idea of a representation of the brain in your hand. So we have three parts of our brain. Okay, we have the reptilian, which is the oldest. We have the mammalian, which is in the middle. That's the next oldest. And then we have the neocortex, the thinking part of the brain. And he shows it by a hand. So here's your reptilian brain. The thumb is your mammalian brain. And here, folded over everything, is your neocortex, the latest evolutionary advancement in the brain. This is where we can think, plan, have rational appreciation of things. When we are activated by defensive states, fight, flight, or shutdown, as Dan says, we flip our lid. We just flip our lid. In these states, which have been wired for survival by evolution, part of the wiring involves that access to our thinking mind goes offline. We are not able to think objectively and rationally about situations when we're in hyper or hypoactivation. And at that point in time, then we're being driven either by the mammalian brain or by the reptilian brain. And so those brain aspects that are influencing our physiological state are also going to create a psychological state that goes along with them. So if I'm angry, I'm only going to have angry thoughts. And if I'm afraid, if I'm engaged in flight and I flipped my lid, I'm only going to have frightened or runaway thoughts. This is too much. I have to get away from this. I need to check out for a while. I need to drink, or I need to eat, or I need to watch TV, or I need to lay down, or I need to go for a trip, or I need to buy something new, or I need to get a new job. The life goes on. I mean, the list goes on, and life goes on. But in these states, we're not ourselves. We're not thinking the things we could usually think if we're in our window of tolerance. Our thoughts, our experiences, and our feelings, and our physiology are all being driven by the survival state. And that's what it's supposed to do, right? Like if a saber-toothed tiger is rushing at you and you go, wonder if it's aggressive or friendly. Wonder if it hasn't eaten. Maybe it's eaten. Maybe I'm not in danger. By thinking about those things and trying to figure out, chances are you will be that tiger's lunch. If, on the other hand, this is what we have wired, we perceive a tiger and we run. We don't even think. We're just running. That's how these instincts save our life. They're not designed to naturally let you think and interfere with their actions. Thinking takes longer than these responses do. In other words, if I have to think about what's coming at me, I won't get out of the way. If fight or flight takes over, I leap to action one way or another to defend myself by fighting for my life or by getting the heck out of there really fast. So these are the symptoms of fight or flight. And anytime you experience these, and it's not wrong or bad to experience them, and we all have them, it's helpful to know, this is where the map comes in, it's helpful to know where you are on the map, to begin to pinpoint, I'm having emotional outbursts today. I'm really short-tempered with people. I must be activated, because that doesn't usually happen. Let's look for a few minutes at the symptoms of hypoactivation, also shutdown. So in shutdown, there's a reduced awareness of sensation. We become emotionally numb or flat, unable to think, dissociated, a memory impairment. Learning is almost impossible here. Actually, learning is almost impossible in all defensive states. You'll find yourself in this state sleepy, unable to stay awake, spacey, withdrawn, unable to actively defend yourself, collapsed, bodily posture collapsing. Sometimes it goes to fainting, unable to move, reduced physical movement, where there is movement, but it's minimized. Lethargic, no energy. Also in this state, people feel very alone and disconnected, depressed, passive, ashamed. This is a big one. For those of you who have shame, understand that it is actually part of the shutdown and immobilization response. And again, we'll talk about this more in future modules. But again, to begin to know where you are on the map. At the extreme, in reptiles and in mammals, in extreme danger, they feign death. They lay down, they reduce their breathing, and for all intents and purposes, they're trying to give the predator the sense that they're already dead. People will become less verbal, much less verbal, in a hypoactive situation. They may not talk back to you, they may not be able to form words, or it may take them a long time to form sentences. And often in shutdown, there can be a sense of the desire to disappear. I just want to disappear. Again, in this state, we're not able to think, we're able to think even less than we can think in the activated states, because everything shuts down here. Again, if you're a survivor of trauma, you're going to be much more familiar with the experiences of overactivation and underactivation. And that, in my way of thinking, one of the biggest causes of suffering, long-term, from trauma, is the fact that our nervous system is chronically dysregulated. And so our window and this journey are all about trying to give you the tools and the ability to know where you are on the map and how to shift into your window of tolerance. And so what are some signs of being in your window of tolerance? Well, in your window of tolerance, you can feel your emotions and think about them at the same time. And if you've ever really been angry, you notice that you're much more all about feeling your rage than thinking about your rage. You may think about that person was really, really wrong, but you're not really being self-reflective about the rage. You're just continuing to focus on why you're angry and what someone did to you to make you angry or afraid. In contrast, when you're in the window of tolerance, you have this access to thought because your brain is still on, your lid is on, and you have access to your emotions. In the window of tolerance, feelings and experiences are tolerable. They don't overwhelm you. In the window of tolerance, you have access to compassion and empathy, which is gone when you're in a hyper or hypo activation. In the window of tolerance, you have the ability to learn. We can only truly learn cognitive, new information the more that we're in our window of tolerance. which is why people who are chronically out of their window of tolerance have some school problems. They have trouble learning subjects like math or science or multiplication tables because of the fact that activation interferes with our ability to learn. Also within the zone of optimal arousal, the window of tolerance, we have the ability to be present. That's huge, because if I'm present and I have access to compassion and empathy, here is where I am settled, and here is where I am curious and interested in being in relation with other people, and here is also where I can connect. And here you're able to be curious about your feelings rather than reactive, defensive, or judgmental. So sometimes you might notice you're ashamed, which would tell you you're out of your window of tolerance. But another way to notice that is that you'll be judging yourself for your feelings. Oh, that's so stupid of me to feel that way. I can't believe I feel this way again. Or that's not right. I don't ever get angry. What are they saying? I'm never angry. Other qualities of being in this window of tolerance are feeling safe, feeling more grounded and calm, able to feel connected in a mutual relationship, and here also access to creativity. That our ability to sort of relate to things differently, to think out of the box, to solve our problems, is actually enhanced tremendously when we're in the window of tolerance. So this course, our program, is aimed to give you the ability to widen the window. If your window is narrow, these practices are going to help you widen it. And to be able to help you more and more easily identify where you are, what type of dysregulation you have, and then the kinds of practices and tools that you can employ to help you shift to a more regulated state. As with all of our teachings, and I'll say this periodically, is that going through this, is going to be different for everyone. Some people will have an easy time doing the exercises and practices, and some, because of their trauma background, will have more challenging times. I'd love to invite you as you go through this whole program to remember that tenderness and compassion will be your friends for learning this material. The more that we can support you in being in your window of tolerance while you're learning here will greatly enhance your ability to take in at all levels what we're offering.